Hello and welcome to Narayana IAS Academy. In this session of the top topics of the week, we'll delve into 6 most interesting and important topics from the Hindu and the Indian Express. So let's explore each and every topic in depth so that you are well prepared and informed for the examination. So let's kick off with the first topic.
I've taken two important news. One is the study which is showing that what to do, what do the Atlantic Ocean Hurricane Forecast Portal of India. Another one is the Odisha Cyclone Forecast. Odisha Cyclone Forecast, which is about to get landfall in October 24. So in this topic, we will be discussing regarding what are tropical cyclones. I'll also be mentioning regarding what is hurricane and also some points from this particular study also. Okay. So regarding the syllabus, again it's important for prelims. What is the name of this? All these things are important, and also from mains point of view also, formation of cyclones, effects of cyclone, landfall, all the things are important from mains point of view also. Okay. Alright, so let's see a previous year question which was asked. In South Atlantic and Southeast Asian Pacific Ocean, Pacific regions in tropical and tropical cyclones do not originate. What is the main reason behind this? So again, this is the reason. Reason is being a purely theoretical question. It was asked in 2015. Alright, so context I have already mentioned. One is the impending cyclone. Impending cyclone. Cyclone name is Dana. Cyclone name is Dana. So it was named by Saudi Arabia. It's a prelims related fact only. Named by Saudi Arabia. Dana means what? Generosity. Generosity. Okay. So that is the news. And another one is a study found that there is a link between Atlantic Ocean hurricane and Indian cyclone. We'll discuss what is a hurricane, what is a cyclone and all. Okay. Alright. Tropical cyclone. Tropical cyclone. So what do you mean by a tropical cyclone? Two words are important. One is what is cyclone and another one is why it is known as tropical cyclone. Tropical is giving the location. So cyclone means what? Cyclones are intense rotating storm systems that form over warm oceans. So this is the technical definition of cyclone. So we have tropical cyclone. Why? Because it is forming only at the tropics. It is forming only at the tropics. So that is between Tropic of Cancer, Tropic of Capricorn and Tropic of Cancer. So this area, this is known as the tropic. So it is happening only, occurring only in this area. So that is tropical cyclone. We have another type of cyclone is also there. That is known as temperate cyclone. Just giving you an example only. Temperate cyclone, or it's also known as extra tropical cyclone. Temperate cyclone or extra tropical cyclone. So that will be in this area. Extra tropical means what? Above, that is beyond the tropical area. That will be extra tropical cyclone, usually in the 30° to 60° region. Usually in the 30° to 60° region we have it. And depending on where they are occurring, cyclones may be referred to as hurricane, typhoons, or simply cyclones. If it is in this area, if it is in the Indian subcontinent region, we call it as cyclone. If it is in this Atlantic region, we call it as hurricane. If it is in this Pacific region, we call it as typhoon. So hurricane is in this Atlantic region, typhoon is in this Pacific region, and cyclone is in the Indian Ocean region. Okay, so that is the basics regarding tropical cyclone. Next, we'll see how a cyclone is formed. For cyclone to form, there are some conditions for a cyclone to form. One is obviously tropical cyclone means it will be occurring above seas only. Tropical temperate cyclones are not like that, but tropical cyclones to occur, sea should be there. So temperature should be at least 26.5. 26.5 means what? It should be warm waters. It should be warm waters. Okay, so above cold waters, tropical cyclones won't occur. It should be having this warm water. So every time tropical cyclones won't occur, when these conditions are proper, then only it will be happening. So what is happening here? The warm water. Imagine this is warm water. So this warm water will be heating. This warm water will be heated due to sunset, and it will be rising up. It will be rising up, and again it will be going here, and again from here it will be cooling. So warm water will be heated, it will be this water, it will be evaporating and it will be going here, and it will be cooling. During cooling, what will happen? It will condense. It will condense and create the clouds will be formed. Clouds will be formed, and again here it releases the heat. Releases the heat, and that is actually powering the storm cyclone. So this release of the heat is actually powering the cyclone. Okay. All right. So what is created here? Here a low pressure area is created. Here a low pressure area is created. And what about here? Here a high pressure area is created. Okay, high pressure area is created. So basically we have a gradient. Here it is low is there, and here it is high is there. Okay. So what will happen from the high pressure area? From the high pressure area, wind will be flowing towards a low pressure area. High pressure area, wind will be flowing towards a low pressure area. And during this flow, what will happen? We have something known as Coriolis effect. Coriolis effect. So Coriolis effect happens due to the rotation of Earth only. When the Earth rotates, there is something known as Coriolis effect is happening. So during Coriolis effect, if it is going like this, if it is going like this due to Coriolis effect, it will be turning. It will be turning like accordingly. It will be in which hemisphere it is. According to that, it will be turning. So if it is in the northern hemisphere, rotation will be in the counterclockwise direction, and if it is in the southern hemisphere, it will be in the clockwise direction. So this kind of a turning will be happening. Okay, so these are some of the conditions which are required for formation of a cyclone, and also based on how this storm is intensifying. So based on this only we are considering what kind of a cyclone it is. It can be a very dangerous cyclone. It can be a very dangerous cyclone, or it can be a mild cyclone also. So that is based on the storm intensification only. So as the storm gathers energy, the wind speed will be increasing. Storm gathers energy, the wind speed will be increasing. So after one point, after usually normally also this will happen. So after one point, again if it is crossing a threshold, at that time it will be forming as a cyclone. Okay, and also we told it like here only the warm water is there, and here only this is happening. So this area is known as the eye of the cyclone. This area is known as the eye of the cyclone. Here only the most intense winds are occurring, and also there is something known as vertical shear. Vertical shear. Vertical shear. Shear means difference between the speeds in the cyclone. Top here and here. Difference in these two area. For a normal cyclone to occur, it should be low. The vertical shear should be low. Then only a cyclone will be. That is a favorable condition for formation of a cyclone. All right. Now let's see what is India. What is India's vulnerability to cyclone? India's vulnerability to cyclone. You know, right? India is a coastal area only. India is a coastal area only. So this is India's coast. This is India's coast. Here we have the Arabian Sea. Here we have the Arabian Sea, and here we have the Bay of Bengal. So this much coastal area we have. India as a peninsula. So obviously India will be vulnerable for cyclones, both in Bay of Bengal as well as Arabian Sea. Especially earlier and all, Arabian Sea cyclones were kind of less only, but nowadays in Arabian Sea also cyclones are kind of frequent. Okay, so India's long coastline making very highly vulnerable for cyclone. And again regarding the cyclone which is going to landfall in on October 24, that is Dana. It will be making land. It is as per the predictions, it will be making landfalls in the Odisha, Bengal coast. Okay, and this name was given by Saudi Arabia. Now, so frequent cyclones occur particularly during pre-monsoon and post-monsoon season. So why pre-monsoon season cyclones will be occurring? Monsoon means rains will be coming and the waters will be cool. Okay, so pre-monsoon means what? Pre-monsoon means no rains are there. No rain, no water, no cold water. So waters will be hot. Okay, no rain, it will be hot. Another thing is post-monsoon season. So why post-monsoon season? Post-monsoon season means the land will be cool. Already the monsoon has been coming. Land will be cool, but the sea won't be cool. Sea will be still warm. So that is why post-monsoon season also we have cyclones. Another thing is climate change is increasing the intensity and frequency of cyclones due to rising sea level and warming ocean. Okay, so how climate change is increasing? One is rising sea level. How rising sea level is happening? Ice melting. If climate change occurs, ice will be melted. Polar levels, ice will be melted, and coastal area will be high. I mean, the sea will be taking up many of the coastal areas. So ice melting will be happening. Ice melting will be happening. The water levels will be rising. That is also one favorable condition for this cyclones. Another thing is warming of oceans. I have already mentioned it, like for cyclones to occur, minimum temperature is around 26-degree temperature should be there. The climate change means what? Climate change means again greenhouse. Already I mentioned it, like greenhouse gases are emitted more, and obviously the warming will be more. So sea will also be warmed, right? So warming of oceans will be intensifying the tropical cyclone. Again, this is the new study which was in the newspaper. Study highlights the increasing unpredictability of climate patterns like El Nino and La Nina. You know what is El Nino? El Nino means usually Indian subcontinent will be, the rains will be less rain in El Nino, less rain in El Nino. La Nina means it will be more. La Nina means more. Basically, this El Nino as well as La Nina will be disrupting the normal monsoon pattern. So, based on this, cyclones are becoming unpredictable. Unpredictable means what? If it's a normal cycle, okay, this July monsoons will be there, November monsoons will be there. So this cycle is disrupted. July we won't be getting any rains. So like that, this cycle is getting disrupted. So based on this cycle only, we are predicting things. So that is becoming difficult during this El Nino land and also the climate change period. Okay, so that is India's vulnerability to cyclones. Next one, again, this was from the study only. India and other regions are increasingly vulnerable to both chronic stressors as well as acute stressors. Chronic stressors means long-term issues. Long-term issues we call it as chronic stressors. Acute stressors means short-term. Short-term we call it as acute stressors. Okay, so long-term an example for long-term is climate change. Climate change itself is a long-term. Variability in the rainfall pattern. Variability in the rainfall pattern. That is a chronic stress only. It's a long-term only. Over time, the rainfall will be varying. And also acute stretches. Again, we'll take the similar examples only. High rainfall, low rainfall. This will be short-term stress. So like that, based on this also, India's vulnerability is changing. Okay. All right. Next one, a number of strong cyclone is increasing. Why number of strong cyclone is increasing? To the ideal condition to get a cyclone means the temperature should be warm. The sea surface should be warm only. Here the sea surface is warm, but still much warmer, much warmer. So that is why number of strong cyclones are increasing. But still, the study again says that the number of cyclones are constant. Number of cyclones are constant, but in that itself the number of strong cyclones are high. That is what the study is. Again, the study recommends improved cyclone forecasting. Obviously, mostly we'll be using the data based on the normal patterns only. Like this month it will be monsoon. This month there won't be monsoon. This month will be colder month. So like that only. But due to climate change and due to these kind of El Nino and La Nina, we have to consider that also while making the prediction. Another one is hyperlocal risk marketing. Hyperlocal risk marketing means what? Localized risk mapping. Localized. Usually we will be mapping it for eastern coast. I'm just giving an example. We'll be mapping it for this eastern coast. Eastern coast. And we'll be mapping it for the western coast. And earlier, some years back and all, Kerala was witnessing a lot of cyclones. So that is something which is localized. So we have to consider this kind of a Odisha. So we have to consider this kind of localized factors also. So that is hyper local risk mapping. Okay, all right. So that's it regarding this particular topic, tropical cyclones.
India-China border dispute. The article becomes important for prelims as well as mains. For prelims because there are many locations which are very important because places in news becomes very important for prelims. And for mains, you need to have a broad idea about India-China relations, how they are changing, and this border dispute becomes core area of India-China relations. Now, look at this previous year question to understand the importance of this topic. China is using its economic relations and positive trade surplus as tools to develop potential military power status in Asia. In the light of this statement, discuss its impact on India as her neighbor. So India-China relation becomes important, I told you. In the syllabus of GS paper 2, specifically it has been mentioned that India and its neighborhood is very important. So China being our neighbor becomes very important. Now what is exactly happening? Recently, India and China have come up with an agreement. This agreement is related to LAC, that is line of actual control. It says that we are restoring the patrolling rights along the line of actual control, and specifically they have mentioned two areas. One is Depsang and another is Demcho. Now to understand all of this, I'm saying this is one of the biggest news for today, and to understand its importance, you need to know what is line of actual control. You must have heard about LOC. Now that LOC is related to India and Pakistan. Whenever we discuss the India-Pakistan boundary dispute, we talk about this line called LOC. But when it comes to India-China, we talk about LAC, line of actual control. Now see, we assume that India-China map is somewhat like this. But in reality, this region which is named as Aksai Chin, this is under the control of China at present. So right now the line which we consider as the boundary between India and China, it is not formally accepted. It is not international boundary as such. But in reality, in practical sense, the border that exists at this moment is this LAC, that is line of actual control. Now, how did we come to this particular line? See, India and China had this problem of boundary dispute because we never provided or we never demarcated any specific line, or we never provided any specific map of India-China. So the problem is, since the British era, we observe that there is no fixed line which can be considered as international boundary between India and China. Now, because there was no such boundary, and after that we saw the war of 1962. This war in which China attacked India, China had taken control over this region of Aksai Chin. And since that time, Aksai Chin is there with China. Now, that's why we are saying from that time onwards, means from this 1962 war onwards, we have this line called line of actual control. Clear? Now, again, I would repeat, it is not a formally agreed line. It is just that we assume that this is one line. In practical sense, only we have control till this particular location. After that, we do not have any control over the territory. Okay. Now, when we talk about line of actual control, we can see it through three different areas, or we can look at India and China's boundary in three different sectors. Now this first sector is this western sector. So if you look at the Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh map, so here whatever region where we have boundary dispute, this we called western sector. So the area is somewhere around 1570 kilometers, and here we have boundary disputes. I would say this is the most contentious, most struggling part for India-China relations, because whatever fight we take up or whatever incursions take place, they happen in maximum in this western sector. Okay. Then at second number comes this eastern sector. In the eastern sector, you will have this Arunachal Pradesh specifically. So eastern sector is somewhere around 1325 kilometers, which starts from this area of Sikkim till this Arunachal Pradesh. And even in this area, we have problem, or we have boundary disputes. Specifically, China claims over this entire region of Arunachal Pradesh, almost entire Arunachal Pradesh. They say that it is part of our Tibet, or they call it South Tibet. So this is also important or most contentious sector. At the third, it will be the central sector. Just a second. So at the third, here we have the central sector. This includes your Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, this area. Now we can say, as compared to this western sector and this eastern sector, this central sector is relatively peaceful. We have not seen much fights or much incursions in this area. So relatively it is quieter, relatively it is better. But western sector is the point of contention, we can say. Clear? So we have three different sectors for line of actual control. Now, just to give you a brief, the western sector includes Jammu and Kashmir and the Xinjiang part of China. Now, here there is a big problem when it comes to western sector. I told you that because Britishers could not draw a fixed boundary, that became a conflict even after our independence. So what happened? The British government at that time tried to bring in some map. First, they draw one line in this western sector. The line was named as Johnson line. Now, interesting thing about this Johnson line was that, according to that Johnson line, Aksai Chin was part of India and not part of China. Okay. Then after some time, they also drew one line called McCarthy-McDonald line. Now, according to McDonald line, this Aksai Chin is part of China and it is not part of India. So Britishers came up with different lines, and this becomes the part of contention now between India and China, because India says we inherited power from the British India, from the Britishers, and that's why we support this idea of Johnson line and we accept this line as the international boundary. But China says no, we accept this McDonald line and not Johnson line. So this is why we see western sector remains the most contentious section. So if you look at whatever disputes that have taken place, for example, the 1962 war. In this war, they have taken this Aksai Chin, which is part of this western sector, and even the recent disputes which took place in the year 2020, specifically the Galwan Valley clashes, which you must have heard. Those also took place in this western sector only. Clear? Now, if you look at middle sector, I told you it is quieter. Eastern sector, as far as eastern sector is concerned, the dispute is there because one line was drawn by the British government that is named as McMahon line, and this line was drawn in the year 1914. Now, to draw this line, British government got in touch with the representatives of Tibet and they drew this line with consensus. But the problem is China said we do not accept this line. Anyway, they do not accept that Tibet is an independent country. They don't accept what Tibetan representatives has done. So they say this line we do not accept. And that's why eventually even this sector became a contentious zone. Clear? Now, moving ahead. What all efforts India and China have taken in order to resolve our border disputes. We had border disputes, but we took some measures also so that we can sort it out. All these issues we can sort it out. So first thing we did is we brought this Panchshil Agreement of 1954. Now I'm specifically talking about the agreements or the conversations which had taken place after the independence of India. So after independence, the first major thing was Panchshil Agreement. Now this was an agreement signed between Indian government and the Chinese government. Panchshil, that means it is talking about 5 specific principles that India and China will adhere to. These 5 principles are mutual respect for sovereignty. That means both countries will respect the sovereignty of each other. There will be non-aggression. No country will show any kind of aggression or any kind of attack against the other country. Non-interference. No country is going to interfere in the matters of other country. Fourth, equality, that both countries are having equal status. And fifth, peaceful coexistence. That means both India and China will exist peacefully. Coexist means we both are going to exist together. So we'll not fight. So overall, it seems the agreement is very nice. We're talking about non-aggression at all. But interestingly, in the year 1962, China did not adhere to this Panchshil agreement. Actually, in the year 1960, we saw some boundary talks between Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, who was the Prime Minister of that time, and Chinese Premier Zhao and Lai. They met in the year 1960. They wanted to resolve the issue, but they could not do it. The meeting was a complete failure. And after that, we saw the War of 1962. So we say that these principles were not adhered to in the year 1962. Now the point is, because of this war, the situation became very intense between India and China. Our diplomatic relations also started becoming very deteriorated. So I can say since 1962 till 1976, we did not have any kind of relations at all with China, especially in diplomatic terms. But by 1976, we established our diplomatic relations and we wanted that our issues should be resolved again. Now, in the year 1988, Rajiv Gandhi visited China. There it was decided that we will make some arrangements so that we can resolve this boundary dispute. So they came up with India-China joint working group. Now this joint working group will have some bureaucrats, some personnels who will sit and peacefully try to resolve this boundary dispute. So this is one of the way wherein you are saying that instead of using military, we will use diplomats. Then came this 1993 agreement on the maintenance of peace and tranquility. Now obviously we had fought a war. It's very difficult to reduce the intensity that is there on the border. So we had our military presence in this region, they had their military presence in the boundary. So we decided that we will try to reduce that. We will try to ensure that at the local, at that boundary level, there should not be any fight among our military personnel. So to prevent such skirmishes, it was decided that both countries will respect the status quo condition. Status quo means whatever is the status for now will be considered as the right. For example, if we have, for example, this Aksai Chin, right now this is with China and we do not have this region with us. India is here. So we will say whatever is the situation, we will let it be as it is. So in this agreement, it was decided that we will not go for any fight unless we come up with any kind of resolution. Till that time, let things be as it is. And they also talked about reducing our military troops. So because we had our military standing there, their military standing there, so we decided we'll reduce that troop amount also. This was the agreement in the year 1993. After that, after 3 years, in the 1996, we brought one more agreement. Now see, because both countries have gone for a war earlier, the tensions are high. It's very obvious that no country trusts the other country. India doesn't trust China, China doesn't trust India. So if you want to resolve a boundary dispute, you need to ensure that both countries trust each other. Even if you come up with an agreement and the other country goes against it at one point of time, that how can you trust that person or that particular country? So some confidence building measures were required. Confidence building means we are going to build the trust among each other. So for that we decided that whatever military exercises we conduct in that region, we will reduce that. We will not do such activities. We will not do anything which will escalate the situation or make the situation worse. So this agreement was brought in the year 1996. Now, after that came up a new era in this boundary dispute, wherein in the year 2003, Atal Bihari Vajpayee visited China. And in this visit, it was decided that we will have special representative mechanism. Now this is very interesting. Earlier, we were trying to solve this boundary dispute either through our military or through our diplomats. But now it was decided that we will try to solve it through political means. So we are sending political representative. Now political representative simply means that this is the highest authority. So the level of talks has raised from military or diplomatic to the political level. And if we resolve the crisis through political means, that's the final solution we can say. So special representatives were allocated and this mechanism was started to resolve this issue. And after that, in the year 2013, came this Border Defense Cooperation Agreement. This agreement says that the military commanders that are there, they should have some communication. So there is a commander from China, there is a commander from India. So at local level, we cannot understand what is the escalation or what is the kind of status there at the local level. So at least the military commanders of China and India should communicate, should have some communication channel available through which they can ensure that no situation escalates to a higher stage and it doesn't get into a war. So this is what we can say we have done to settle down our dispute with China, or even China has done this, right? Now, what is happening in recent times? So these all are agreements which we have taken up. We have done all of these things. The trend shows that we were doing really good. China and India doing really good in terms of resolving the problems we had in terms of our boundary dispute. But the things started changing after this. Specifically in the year 2017, we saw Doklam standoff. Now, Doklam is a very interesting place. It is at the tri-junction of Bhutan, India and China. So this is the map of Bhutan, this is India and this is China. And here you see Doklam Valley. So it is a tri-junction, means the border of all three countries is there at this particular location. So here we saw Indian military and Chinese military was having a standoff. That means both were standing against each other. Nobody fought, but at least were standing, showing some kind of assertion or aggression towards each other. Obviously, India did that because China was showing some kind of aggression. Now, this was the first incident. After that, in the year 2020, we saw Galwan Valley clash. Now, this was the most dangerous incident in the India-China relations. Here you can see Galwan. So at the Galwan, specifically first some fight took place at Pangongso and then at Galwan. Why I am saying it is one of the most dangerous incident in the India-China relations? Because before 2020, we were trying to resolve the crisis. Both countries were showing interest in resolving the crisis. But in 2020, the reversal took place. China started showing aggression. So whatever we were doing to build the trust and solve the issue, we started doing exactly the reverse thing. And we started escalating the situation. So Galwan Valley clash was the clash in which China did not agree to any agreement. They actually violated all those agreements they have signed and they started with some aggression against India. Now this is a point of contention now. Now after 2020, both India and China started engaging in some military level talks. Now these military level talks were going on since 2020 till 2024, that is till present times. And these are going on for different regions. Now these regions are very important for you, especially from exam perspective. This region called Pangong So Lake, this Galwan, here you will have Daulat Beg Oldie. Here you have these hot springs. Depsang, I would consider these two as very important, specifically Depsang Plains and this Demcho. Now what happened is that whatever talks took place between 2020 and 2024, in those talks, we solved the issue to some extent. So Chinese military decided to withdraw from that place. Which place? Pangong So, to some extent even from hot spring area. But Chinese military did not agree to leave this region of Depsang Plains and Demcho. And for Indian government or Indian military, these two places are of very much importance. Strategically, Depsang Plain is very important. Why? It's a plain region. See, most of this region is mountainous. In mountainous regions, it's very difficult to move your military. The military vehicles cannot move very easily. So even if you want to attack or defend, in that case, it is very difficult. But here, Depsang Plains, I am saying it is a plain region. So in the plain region, you can easily move your troops. So any country having control over such region would have a better advantage in terms of military movement. So India would never want that Chinese should be here in the Depsang Plains. Very important. Similarly, even Demchok becomes important because the infrastructure, the trade infrastructure that is there between India and China, the trade routes that are there, they are very near to the Demchok region. Also, in the 1962 war, some skirmishes took place in a village which is very near to this Demcho. So we feel that even this region is very sensitive, and this is the place when Indian government was building some infrastructure, some civic infrastructure, for example, a kind of a road or something. Chinese started protesting against Indian government. They said that you should not build any infrastructure in this region. So the first time they did was related to this Demchok region. So Indian government feels that these two regions are highly important strategically, right? And Chinese government did not agree to withdraw their forces from this region. Obviously, before 2020, they were not here. But from this Galwan Valley clash, the military of China was present over here. Now came the next phase of our relation, wherein in the year 2024, that is very recently, we have come up with this agreement, patrolling agreement. Now, those who do not know what is patrolling simply means going and monitoring a particular location. For example, let's say our military has control over this much region, but not every military personnel can stand at every location. So what they do is they go for a walk, or let's say with a vehicle they will go on and they will check every region. So this is called patrolling. They will move and they just monitor the area whether it is safe or not. So this monitoring mechanism, that is called patrolling. For that we have come up with an agreement right now. And in this agreement, even these two strategically important locations, that is Depsang Plains and Demchok, which are the most severe friction points, both the countries have decided that we will not have any kind of incursions in this area, and we are going to withdraw our forces, and we will go back to what was the situation before the year 2020. So return to the pre-2020 status quo along the line of actual control. This is the final concluding point that comes from this 2024 patrolling agreement, which is the recent news, obviously. Clear? So all this is happening. Now, there are some points which we need to consider. Even if this agreement is has been signed, or even if it is being published in the newspapers that this agreement has been conveyed, the problem is the China's stance is not very clear, because whatever we are seeing in news is coming from Indian authorities. Chinese government has still not made their stance clear on this agreement. So we cannot trust Chinese very easily. We have to wait for the mechanism, or the what we say, the Chinese authorities, what they say. We have to wait for their comments specifically. Then there is no clarity about the buffer zones, because since 2020 the relations were worse, and we started developing other buffer zones. Buffer zones are areas which are just maintained so that there will not be any direct fight among the enemies. So some buffer areas were created after 2020. So are we going to remove those buffer areas, or will they continue to exist? There is no clarity about this particular point. Third, what about the patrolling procedure? See, patrolling is done by Indian military also, Chinese military also. But there is a special mechanism. There is a standard operating procedure. There is a step-by-step method through which they do the patrolling. Both sides do it. So, how it will be done? Through the old procedures, or there will be any new mechanisms or new procedures? There is no clarity on this point. Fourth thing is, we do not know what is the motivation of China, because since 2022 till now, we are not having really good relations with China. We are not having really good talks also. So why suddenly China agreed for this particular agreement is a questionable thing. Is it because of some external challenge for China? Is China facing some external challenge? Or if China is going ahead with capturing Taiwan, because of which they want that their western side should be very much stable or peaceful? We do not know Chinese motivation. And at last, if you want to resolve this boundary dispute, it is not going to be solved by just one agreement, because right now there is a trust deficit between India and China. Indian government doesn't trust China at all. Even if they sign an agreement, it is very difficult to trust China. So the way is very long, and we have to wait for things to become better. So even there is BRICS summit which is going to take place. We'll see if there will be any talks related to India-China border in that summit also. So all these things are taking place. I hope you understand India-China border disputes. So if I have to just briefly say, till 2020 things were going in positive directions, but after 2020 things were going in a negative direction. Now this is a good step. The agreement which has taken place, it's a good step, it's a positive step in the direction of solving border dispute with China. But we have to see what exactly happens.
So here the job crisis undermines state legitimacy. Let us actually see what are the dimensions we'll be discussing in this article. So first we'll be discussing about India's job crisis, and moving on we'll be discussing about the concept of employment and unemployment. As you know, with respect to India's vast population, we have one of the largest demographic dividend. That actually means the number of youth, that is the working age population from 15 to 60 years of age. We have a larger demographic dividend. And how do we actually utilize? Is there underutilization of these human resources in India's economy? How is it actually threatening the political institutions and other democratic institutions? How is it actually causing instability in the environment? Instability in the economy and the ecosystem is what we will actually see. So this particular topic becomes important for your GS paper 3 in your mains examination. Economy and issues relating to planning, mobilization of resources, growth, development as well as employment. Now moving forward, there has been a previous year question asked in the year 2022 with respect to that of the welfare schemes. Besides the welfare schemes, India needs a depth, that is a proper and efficient management of inflation and unemployment in order to serve the poor and the underprivileged sections of the society discussed. So as such, unemployment, poverty, social welfare, all that becomes very, very important for discussion, specifically with respect to your mains examination. Now let us let us understand what this particular article is discussing about. Okay. So, India is actually facing a severe shortage of quality jobs. What do you mean by quality jobs? A job or a sector which actually employs skilled people, which is a formal sector. At the same time, it actually gives returns to the economy, or in the terms of profit or increase in the GDP or a significant contribution to the economic growth, etc. So India is facing a severe shortage of such jobs. This threatens both the economy as well as the legitimacy of the democratic institutions. Why do they say it causes threat to democratic institutions? Because recently, if you see the strikes, and there was a lot of unrest in Bangladesh, right, where the unemployed youth actually came together and they protested against the government due to the unavailability of jobs. Okay, so what happens is such kind of restlessness among the youth, it actually turns as a clash, okay, to the government, and this actually distorts their efficient functioning, thereby resulting in the threat to the democratic institutions, particularly the political or the government which is in power. So this actually requires urgent political and structural reform. So that is what has been discussed in this particular article. Let's actually move forward to understand. So let's see what is the problem of the unavailability or lesser quality jobs in India. Okay. So first of all, what is the current status that India is actually having with respect to employment? Let's understand. First of all, India is characterized by low levels of employment. Okay. So if you see, only around 40% of India's working age population, that is the demographic dividend, has been actively employed. Okay, and also there is a dominance of informal sector. For example, the percentage of population who are employed in agriculture is actually more when compared to the services sector, the IT sector, etc. Okay, so this is what is the first 2 points talking about. So India is characterized by low levels of employment. If you see the data from CMIE, that is nothing but the Center for Monitoring Indian Economy, it has said that only 40% of India's working age population is employed. Okay, so this means there is a heavy underutilization of human resources. Okay, this is very, very important. Also, there is a dominance of informal sector, I told you. So, approximately around 90% of India's workforce is in the informal sector. So, when you are in the informal sector, you actually do not have the privileges that the other people have. Like, for example, in terms of pension, then in terms of any kind of social security, in terms of, the PF, or, an assured return from your workplace, all that you do not have. So that will actually have characterized by lack of social security. There is no stable income and the opportunities for professional development. Also, this makes you vulnerable to any kind of economic shocks. For example, a lot of informal people who were daily wage laborers, the people who were working in agriculture, all these people, they actually suddenly lost their job. So the economic shocks impact on them were actually considerably higher when compared to that of the formal sector employees. Next one, there are statistical concerns. That is, we do not have exact numbers of who are the underprivileged people, and also we do not have the exact definition of what you mean by the quality employment. Okay. And also, if you see the statistics in India that is taken into consideration, if a person works even for 1 month in a year, that person is considered to be employed. So if you take the statistics, or if there is a socio-economic census that is actually done, the count is not perfect. So that is what they are saying. So there are statistical concerns. Okay. So even if you work for 1 month in a year, then you are considered to be employed. And also, it does not account for quality of employment, and many have stopped looking for work altogether because these people have been discouraged because of unavailability of jobs and also being unabsorbed by the other sectors. Okay. So this causes sometimes even rage, it causes mental illness, etc. Okay, so they actually are very remorseful people. They are always against the society. Okay, so this can also alter the political system. For example, in 2016, if you see, when the United States was characterized by higher job market specifically for the Indians and for the people from other countries, what happened is that was the time when Mr. Donald Trump had actually won the elections, because he brought about an agenda of America First policy. Okay, so this will even turn the decisions in favor of one particular political party. So citizens sometimes will not be able to make an informed decision whether the agenda will be true or not, whether it's practically feasible or not, whether it is going to really bring about employment in the American economy or not. Okay, so that is how the political decisions are also taken up in haste. So this is one such example. Now moving forward, what are some of the social implications? Okay, so here, just be ignorant of what is written behind me in this board. Here what you need to understand is just the concept. Okay, so first of all, because of the quality job problem in India, there are a lot of social implications. First, obviously there is rising inequality. Okay, so if you see, only the topmost 1% of the population of India, that actually controls around 40% of the wealth of the economy. This is what it is saying. And whereas if you see the bottom 50% of the population, no, they actually account only for 3% of the wealth. So this actually causes a lot of social tension. That is why they say the rich is getting richer and the poor is getting poorer. The second one, there is a lot of youth frustration because they are actually not absorbed into any particular job. So that is the next dimension that we need to understand. And also there is a lot of brain drain, due to lack of quality jobs. That is, the youth are actually not getting a job according to their skill. That is number one. And they are not being absorbed into the labor market. What happens? There's a lot of brain drain from our country where people go in search of better opportunities elsewhere. Okay, so here, as we discussed, the first thing is rising inequality, where top 1% actually account for 41% of the wealth, and you see bottom 50% hold 3% of the wealth. So this reduces the opportunities for the economic mobility. The next one is frustration among the youth, because if you see the population under the age of 35, they find themselves to be very, very irrelevant. Okay, so they have this frustration. Also, the mental health issues are actually seen among the youth these days. And also the next one is brain drain, because they actually find better opportunities abroad, leading to a loss of human capital as well as innovative potential for this particular country. So this is what it is. Next one, let's see what are the political implications. I already told you, right? That is, this the decision of voting and a particular political party to power actually changes. Okay, so that is how they can tweak depending upon the current situation. Politicians actually know how to get you into the trap of getting them in power, and afterwards the same thing continues. Okay, so here reforms are actually basically not their agenda. Their agenda is to come back to power. So this will have political implications. How does it have political implications? First one, there is threat to democratic institutions. We saw. First one, there is threat to democratic institutions. We saw, because this disillusioned youth, they will actually become prone to the political manipulation as well as extremist ideologies. Here example is, there were so many youth in Jammu and Kashmir, where if you actually pay them money because of unemployment, they took up their profession as stone pelting. Okay, so stone pelting actually became their profession. So this is how there is growth of extremism in the country because of unemployment. Okay, so that is one example. Then rise of populism as well as authoritarianism. Okay, so here what happens, it will draw people towards the authoritarian leaders, and this has been observed globally in whichever areas were characterized by unemployment as well as economic distress. Okay, so this is how it is. So this actually affects the long-term political stability. Next one, this is, I told you, an example of Donald Trump in 2016 elections, how the election results actually came out in his favor. Now, the state of political response. The political party or the government have actually come up with major reforms. Let us actually see. Political responses have been very, very inadequate as well as inconsistent as far as what this article is discussing about. As I already told you, the political parties are actually focusing more on their victory rather than focusing on the systemic changes that they have to bring. This is the second point. Next one is, people are trying to bring about creative destruction approach. Okay, on one hand, what do you mean by creative destruction? It actually sounds like an oxymoron, right? Creative destruction is nothing but you actually do away with the obsolete policies with the use of innovation, technology, advancements, etc. and you bring new jobs in the place of old jobs. Okay, so this is what is called as creative destruction. On one hand, they have been relying on creative destruction approach, where the old jobs are actually taken away and new ones are actually brought. On the other hand, there are also policies like the universal basic income, etc., which is a huge strain on the government. Okay, so if you get on to giving a basic income or assured income to every section of the population, to everyone in the country, what happens? It's going to cause a severe economic strain on your exchequer, right? So this is what it is. And also this has resulted in limited efforts to address the structural issues. Okay, because we do not have a clarity on which kind of reforms are we going to bring forth for the people. So this is the state of political response in India. Now moving forward, I told you a creative destruction approach, right? So there is nothing much to understand. This is nothing but it was a theory that was given by Mr. Joseph Schumpeter. Okay, so this was Joseph Schumpeter's theory. This talks about innovation driven market evolution. This is nothing but you actually alter the jobs with innovation as well as technological advancement for the betterment of entrepreneurship. So this is what it is. What are the advantages? Is that it actually gives you high quality jobs. It gives more innovation. It is actually said that it will give you higher efficiency, and also this will encourage more investments and participation as well as more entrepreneurship, that is people coming into business. And when all that is done, it will raise the global competitiveness of your particular country. So this is how it is. How it is going to work? They are going to, how it works is, for example, if Indian government tomorrow comes up with creative destruction approach, they will first perform reforms in the labor market. Whatever is required or whatever changes are required in the employment market, they will do. So it focuses on the labor market reforms. It betters, by reducing the stringent regulations, by giving approvals quickly, it is going to improve the business environment. And also when all this is done, what happens? There's going to be more focus on the skill development. So skill development with the industry aligned programs in order to foster future ready capabilities in the workers. At the same time, we need to see the other side of the coin, which has disadvantages as well. That is, it may lead to short-term employment. And other thing is, it might widen the inequality, because over here, whoever is actually adapted to that technology and advancement will be absorbed into this market. So this would widen the inequality, whereas the other people still in the informal sector, they will still feel insecure and won't be absorbed over here. Next one, might leave vulnerable sections behind, already discussed, and this actually requires a significant transition time, and it won't happen immediately. So this is what it is. Now moving forward, excuse me. Next one, what is the concept of universal basic income? Universal basic income is nothing but it is a kind of an economic policy where you actually say that you receive, for example, if I am the citizen of this particular country, I receive a regular basic income, that is unconditional cash payments to all the citizens, because my country is actually aiming to reduce the poverty. That is, it is giving you a definite financial stability or security. So this is the concept. Okay, so how it works is, here monthly what happens is that the government will transfer me some amount of money, okay, through direct benefit transfer. So this happens, that is, to the accounts linked to Azar and bank accounts, fund by rationalizing the subsidies, reallocating the resources, and the rich people will actually be taxed more, and that will be given to the poorer people. So that is how it actually works. Whether it is advantageous? Of course, yes, because it's going to reduce your poverty. It is going to bring down, or what you say, it is going to bring down the financial instability, or in other words, you can say it's going to enhance your financial security, isn't it? Then it also shows that your government is actually for a welfare administration. Okay, so here it is also a part of what? DPSP, isn't it? That is, establishing a welfare state is a part of DPSP. And also it gives a freedom of choice for the beneficiary. If I am getting that, I can actually choose whether I have to use it for my LPG, whether I need to use it for my food grains, food procurement, whether I have to use it for the education, etc. So that gives a freedom of choice to the beneficiaries. Also, if you see the other side, that is disadvantage, of course it's a huge fiscal burden for the population India has. For how many people will you give a definite income? So this is what it's a fiscal burden, and also it will reduce the work incentive. Of course, people will not be motivated. It does not address the dignity aspect over here, and it can also lead to inflation, because everyone is actually having money. So what happens? Ultimately, the prices and everything will actually go up. So this is what is the concept of universal basic income. So what is the way forward? See, there are a few topics like this where you need to take down notes which are already been discussed by good authors. Okay, so this particular article is a very good article. For example, the points like universal basic income, we have discussed the advantages and disadvantages, and also creative destructive approach by Joseph Shumter. All this, if you quote, no, these are brownie points that will make you actually it will give the opinion about you to the examiner, that you are very well prepared to answer the demand of the question. So way forward is, you need to do a lot of education reform as well as focus on the skill development. Also, there has to be modernization of the industry. At the same time, there has to be diversification. That is, not everyone can be qualified to get into the IT and the services sector, right? So accordingly, the sectors have to be modernized, and also there have to be labor market reforms, whereas the informal sector is also subject to improving the kind of jobs that they actually offer currently. So skill development, industrial modernization, and labor market reforms. Here I am just telling you or taking you through the basic concepts, because don't focus on this, because this will be provided as notes to you on your DNA. That will be posted to you on your Telegram, as well as it is available on the website. Okay, so understanding concept through these DNA classes are very important, so that you have your notes, you go back, and when you read through, you can recollect as to what we've discussed in this particular session. So this is what it is. Now moving forward, there is also promotion of entrepreneurship in MSME. That is, rather than focusing on bigger sectors, you can also focus on this MSME, that is a micro, small as well as the medium scale enterprises, which is the backbone of the Indian economy. That has to be strengthened, and also there has to be a comprehensive social welfare system that actually includes what you say. You have to have accessible healthcare, you should have affordable housing, you should have accessible education, and there has to be proper social security, ensuring that citizens actually feel safe in the country. So that is what a social welfare system actually has to be established.
We'll understand about Kala Azar, and this is important for both prelims as well as mains. In mains, this topic can be aligned under science and technology, right? So again, if you see, a question was asked on Zika virus disease in the year 2017. So question on Kala Azar can also be expected in the UPSC examination. Now, what is the context? The context is that India has done a remarkable job in spreading or in preventing the spread of Kala Azar. So back then, India was contributing significantly in the overall Kala Azar diseases in the world. But given the efforts of the government of India, India has done a remarkable job in reducing the number of people who are affected by the Kala Azar disease. Now, for 2 consecutive years, the numbers have fallen to below 1 per 10,000. The number is below 1 per 10,000, and this number is for 2 consecutive years. So this is a remarkable achievement India has achieved. First and foremost, what is Kala Azar? This will be asked in the UPSC examination, right? Now, Kala Azar, also known as visceral leishmaniasis. Again, this term is very difficult, so I am not able to pronounce it. Not important, but important is to remember that it is a neglected tropical disease. It is a tropical disease. It is, this disease is endemic in the tropical region. It's an infectious disease that primarily affects the poor populations. Now, this is a result of what? Because of unhygienic places. The places which are not clean, where there is no healthcare facility, where the sanitation is poor, these regions are the epicenter of the Kala Azar disease, which means it affects majorly the poor people. Why? Because the poor people, where do they stay or where do they live? They live in the slums, right? They live in the slums and or let's say by the road streets, and these places are not clean, they are not hygienic, right? Now, despite affecting the lives of people and despite affecting the health of people, the world is not focusing to eradicate this disease. So if you compare with tuberculosis, HIV, the world is working very hard to eliminate these diseases. But despite the fact that Kala Azar is impacting public health, this disease is receiving less attention from the world. And this disease, Kala Azar disease, is caused by protozoa parasite. It is a disease caused by a parasite, which means it is important to remember that this is not caused by bacteria or virus or fungi. So a question can be asked, Kala Azar disease is caused by the bacteria or some name of bacteria? No, it is not caused by bacteria. It is caused by parasite. And what is parasite? They are small microorganisms that depend on other living beings, or they feed on other living beings. Transmission. Now, this disease spreads when infected sandflies bite humans, which means the parasites in the sandflies, they are transmitted to human beings when the sandflies bite human beings. right? Which means again parasites, because of parasites in these sand flies that transfer to human beings. So again, this point is very, very important. Symptoms: fevers, weight loss, swelling of the spleen and liver, and severe anemia, right? So these are the symptoms. See, all these points are very, very important for your prelims. You'll be given a question like we saw with respect to Zika virus. They'll give you 2 statements, 3 statements, and they'll ask you which of the following statements is correct. And if you do not treat it, it will completely affect your immune system. And what is the treatment? The treatment is drugs like sodium stibogluconate and meglumine antimonate. So these are the drugs. Please remember the names of these drugs. But the WHO recommends combination therapies of these drugs. So remember these 2 drugs, right? Now, if you see that in the 2000s, India contributed a large population of the global Kala Azar cases. So, of all the cases in the world, India contributed heavily in the 2000s. But then, if you see the recent few years, right, especially in the year 2023, India reported this many cases and 4 deaths. Talking of 2024, the country has registered 339 cases and only 1 death, which means now of the overall diseases relating to Kala-Azar, India is a country who has taken major steps to reduce or eliminate the Kala-Azar disease by, running health campaigns, by improving sanitation, by also making sure that poor people, receive healthcare facilities. Right? So, by working on these things, the government has ensured that India's contribution in the overall Kala-Azar disease comes down, right? And has now come down. So, this is a national Kala-Azar elimination program undertaken by the government of India, which was, started in the year 2002. What is the purpose? That is to completely eliminate or eradicate Kala-Azar disease by the year 10, or let's say it was revised further to 2015. For this, India signed an agreement with 2 countries, Bangladesh and Nepal. That is, with the efforts of these countries, India has made active efforts to eliminate Kala-Azar disease. And for this, India has run a program at the national level. And what is that program? National Vector-Borne Disease Control Program. Right? So, all the programs that we run under this Kala-Azar or to eliminate Kala-Azar is, or it comes under this National Vector-Borne Disease Control Program, and this program is under National Health Mission. So, National Health Mission is the umbrella program or umbrella mission, and under this we have the National Vector-Borne Disease Control Program. All these points are very, very important for your prelims examination. So make sure you know each and every point. You don't have to mug it up. You just have to revise it 3 times, 4 times, or let's say before your examination. Just going through this point will help you to remember these points, right?
Now, Gaza war is in news since last 1 year. So is it important? It is important certainly from the international relations, from the world order perspective. So this topic relates to your mains GS paper 2 section, which includes different bilateral, regional and global groupings. Here we are specifically talking about global south. So the grouping becomes important. Now look at this previous year question. The long sustained image of India as a leader of the oppressed and marginalized nations has disappeared on account of its newfound role in the emerging global order. Elaborate. Now here the question is focusing on one part, that India used to project its image as the leader of oppressed and marginalized nations. Somewhere we are talking about global south, that India was projecting its image as the leader of global south. So we must know what is global south also in detail to answer this question. Now what is the context? Recently, a person who was Hamas chief has been killed by Israeli military in the Gaza, and that's why this Gaza war was in news again. Now the point is, the war is going on, But if you look at the position taken by countries from global south, it is very much different. Not every country is taking the same stance related to this conflict. So to understand, we must know what is this conflict all about. Okay, Israel-Hamas conflict. Now this conflict belongs to an age-old conflict named as Israel-Palestine conflict. Now if you look at this map, here you see Israel, here you have Egypt, Jordan, Syria, here you will see Lebanon, and here you see Mediterranean Sea. Now earlier this particular region was under the Ottoman Empire, and we saw that here a country was named as Palestine, which was existing over here. But later on, a Jewish country was developed. A new country was set up in the name of Israel. And with time, we have observed that the size of Israel is increasing and size of Palestine is decreasing. Right now, if you look at this particular image, whatever this region is, this particular region which is named as West Bank and this region which is named as Gaza, only these two territories are there with the Palestinian authorities, and remaining part is there with Israel. And the conflict is still going on. Palestinians say that the entire land belongs to Palestinians, and Israel would say that this land belongs to Israelis. That's why the conflict is going on. And this conflict exists since 20th century, the early 20th century. Now later on, when it comes to Palestine, from the Palestine, a special group named as Hamas came into picture in the year 1987. This is a militant group. They said that we are going to fight for this Palestinian territory against Israel. And they clearly said that we don't believe that Israel should exist on this map. Israel is not the right country to stay here. So they want to completely vanish Israel from the map. They don't want Israel to stay. They don't want any Jewish person to stay over there. They want Palestinian state altogether. So this is Hamas. I hope you understand. Now I'm saying this conflict is there since early 20th century. After every few years, we see some tensions between Israeli forces and Hamas. This is very normal. Just like India-Pakistan, many times we see escalations. So the tensions are still going on. But the point is, in the year 2023, that is last year, in the month of October to be very specific, suddenly people from Hamas, or the Hamas as an organization, they launched a missile attack against Israel, and that was one of the deadliest missile attack ever seen in the history of Israel-Palestine conflict. So once this attack was launched, Israel considered it as a terrorist attack, and Israel retaliated. That is, Israel also launched a war against Hamas at that point of time. So in the month of October, year 2023, this thing started. And since that time, the war is still going on. We are still observing that the war is still in its escalating phase. It is just increasing and increasing. Clear? Now this is Israel-Hamas conflict. Now the point is, we want to know what is the stance of global south with respect to this particular war. Does every country from this global south looks at it as a terrorist attack or a war, and everyone is supporting Israel, or everyone is supporting the Palestinian authorities or the Hamas? This is what our concern is. Now first of all, those who do not know what is global south, look at this particular map. Here in this map you will observe the countries which are in blue right now. If I draw just one line over here, for example, if I draw this particular line, you will observe some differences between these countries and these countries. These countries I am calling as global north, and these countries are global south. What are the differences? First of all, these countries are industrialized. Their economy is at a very good position. They have advanced economies. Their health infrastructure is good. Their educational infrastructure is good. What we can clearly say that these are industrialized nations, right? Or we can also call them, these are developed countries. Now, if you compare this global north with this global south, which includes Latin America, Africa, major part of Asia, etc., then these countries are not that developed. Most of these countries, you will find either they are in the developing phase or they are less developed countries. If you compare, they are not industrialized. Some countries are industrializing. Right now, India is going ahead with Make in India project. China is also industrializing. But we are not that industrialized like this global north. We are not yet developed. If you look at health infrastructure, education infrastructure, all of these things, it is not available here. So if I have to say in simple terms, this global south seems to be suffering from the issue of poverty, the issue of income inequality, the issue of lack of infrastructure. So overall we call it, this entire region is the poor region and this entire region is the developed and rich region, right? So to show this difference, this line, this hypothetical line was drawn. It was named as Brandt line. It was named as Brandt line to show that how the world is very different. Global north is very different from this particular global south. Clear? Now how this terminology came into picture. Now this we call as a terminology of Cold War era. Now if you remember the Cold War, when the World War II ended, then we saw that the world was divided into two different stratas. We can call one led by USA and another led by USSR. You see that was the Cold War wherein these two poles or these two countries were trying to lead the entire world. USA was representing capitalism, whereas USSR was representing socialism. Now those countries who started supporting USA, they came on this side. They were called as first world. Those who were having the economic system of capitalism, they were termed as first world countries. The other one who were being led by USSR, those who were having economic system termed as socialistic economic system, those countries were termed as second world countries. But there were some countries who neither followed US's path nor followed USSR's path. And those countries were the countries which were earlier colonized by these European countries. For example, India was earlier colonized by Britain. Many countries of Africa were colonized by European countries. So all these countries, when they got their independence, they did not follow any particular path. And these countries were termed as third world countries. Third world countries. Now we are talking specifically about these third world countries. These are the countries nothing but representing the global south. Now earlier they were termed as third world. But in the year 1990-91, by that time, USSR completely collapsed. And after that, there was no second world. So there was only first world and third world. So we started changing the terminology. Instead of using the term third world, we started using the term global south. It was felt that this term is very much derogatory and disrespectful. So it is better to use the term called global south to represent this entire group. Clear? So again, I'll show you the map once again. This is the global south. Now Australia, although geographically it is there in the southern part, but it is considered as part of global north. Why? Because it is also industrialized, it is also developed, it is also rich. So that's why we are not considering Australia as part of this global south. Rest, everything is there. Clear? And the conditions are very much similar in this entire global south. Okay? Now, moving ahead. What is the position of global south? First of all, if you look at global north, so in global north, just if you remove Russia, rest all of the countries, maximum countries are directly supporting Israel in this Israel-Hamas conflict. They are standing with Israel. They are even sending their weapons or something. For example, USA is sending many weapons, many aircraft and all to help Israel. So in this war, global north is clearly supporting Israel, and even Israel was even developed as a state. It was developed to showcase the power of Britain or USA or these these industrialized countries. It is said that this entire global north tries to dominate on this global south, either through colonization or any other way. Now here if you look at this thing clearly, right now the trend is changing. In the 21st century, there are many countries who are part of global south. They are also becoming relatively more developed. They are also emerging as big economies. So if you take the example of China, take example of India, both of these countries are doing economically really good. If you look at the group called BRICS, this group involves countries of the global south only, although it's a very small group. But if you compare this group with G7, which is a group only which belongs to global north, then economically, specifically in terms of purchasing parity, this BRICS group represents larger economic contribution to the world than this G7 countries. My point is, the global south right now is doing relatively better, and that's why we are questioning what is the role and what is the position of global south on this particular war. Are they supporting Israel or are they supporting Hamas? Clear? Now look at this position. Let's say first the China's approach. What is China saying? Historically, if you see, China supported Palestine and not Israel. Because if you look at the way China, India, South Africa, these countries look at Israel, is through the angle of colonization. That the North or the Britain, USA, these countries, these Western countries have always tried to dominate and colonize these southern countries. And that's why even existence of Israel is an example of colonization. And that's why they don't support it. And here when you look at China, although they support the Palestinian cause, they support that there should be a country called Palestine. But they are not directly against Israel also, because they need Israel to some extent. So here when Hamas is attacking Israel in October 2023, when Hamas launched missile attacks on Israel, this country, that is China, did not criticize or condemn this kind of an attack. Whereas if you look at what India did, India said that such a terrorist attack should not be acceptable to any country. So at that point of time, India was standing with Israel, whereas China did not condemn it. Now, if you look at the trend, what is going on, what China is doing, China is trying to position itself as a mediator. China is trying to do one thing, that there are Arab countries like you say Saudi Arabia, Qatar, or Iran, etc. And there is Israel. China is trying to balance its relations, and China is somewhere showing importance to the Arab countries by supporting Palestinian cause. Why? Because China has to make many investments in that region. China has to ensure its energy security. Whatever oil supply or crude oil supply, natural gas supply is coming to China, that is dependent on these countries. So overall, if you look at China's terms, China is relatively focusing on these Arab countries more. Okay. Now, if you look at India, historically, even India supported the Palestinian cause. We also say that Palestine should be a country in itself. They should have some authority over there. But India has come up with a support for two-state solution, wherein we say that both Israel and Palestine should coexist. We support this cause, saying that practically it is the best solution to go ahead with. Now the point is, we say this thing, but on the other hand, we have our interest in the Middle East. So again, if we see this thing, wherein we have Arab countries and we have Israel. So we also need Arab countries because of our energy security needs. We also need crude oil and all. If we go against their cause, they will start providing us oil, or in case they don't provide us crude oil and all, our economy cannot grow. So we are dependent on Arab countries. We are also dependent on Israel. Why? Because since last 1 or 2 decades, we are observing that Israel and India's relations are becoming better. Specifically, we are focusing more on defense, technology and counter-terrorism. In these angles, Israel is helping India. So that's why when it comes to security of India, we are looking at Israel. So the country becomes very important. So what is India doing right now? We are showing our position as a balancer. We are trying to balance our interests with respect to Arab countries as well as Israel. So we are not taking any particular stand. We are neither supporting this side or that side directly because of these reasons. Clear? Now look at third country from the global south, that is South Africa. What is South Africa doing? South Africa has also seen the kind of colonization which we have seen. There was a law called apartheid law in South Africa. According to that, the South Africa was divided in racial terms. The blacks who were in majority were given different treatment and the whites who were minority were given different treatment. And that's why South Africa looks at entire issue from this racial injustice angle. So if you look at this conflict, Hamas versus Israel, South Africa clearly says that Israel is wrong. In this after this particular attack of 2023, in the month of December, South Africa went to International Court of Justice saying that Israel, who is right now at war with Hamas or at the Gaza, they are conducting operations in a very inhuman manner. They are violating human rights. They are killing people, innocent civilians. And that's why they went to International Court of Justice against Israel. So what does this show? This shows that South Africa's stance is very clearly against Israel. Now, if you look at the moral standing, then morally they are taking a stand with the support for Palestine, which is anyway taken by China or any other global south country. But in practical terms, the stand which is taken by South Africa is not taken by China or India or any other global south country. So overall, the picture that I want you to see is that the global south lacks unity. We don't have any unity among each other. We are not taking one stand which is very clear, which is morally correct for the global south. And when we are divided, then we cannot take the right stand. Now, why this global south, or why are we even discussing about global south? Why the discussion becomes very important? First of all, global south is now very important. First, it has got lots of resources. You look at resources in terms of population. If you look at the population of global south, it includes China and India. That means anyway, it's going to have very high population. This population, if provided with education and health and skills, they can become the engine of growth. They can provide a really good economic growth. So they have got these resources. Apart from that, these countries have got natural resources also, such as let's say rivers, let's say mountains, let's say forests, biodiversity. If you look at the biodiversity part, then you will see that it is maximum there in the global south part. So resources are there with global south. Second, their economic might is increasing. That means they are becoming economically stronger. See, global north was very powerful earlier. It is powerful right now also. But in economic terms, now many countries of global south are emerging. I gave you the example of BRICS. I gave you the example of even China and India, that they are emerging, they are becoming larger economies. So this is important. Next, their political influence is also increasing. You see, nowadays we say that to stop the Russia-Ukraine war, India can become a peace negotiator. When there was a conflict between Iran and Saudi Arabia, China came into picture and tried to negotiate some kind of a peace deal. This shows that countries like China and India are even becoming politically influential in the international affairs. Now, this is something new because earlier this was done only by the global north. Okay. Then we are challenging the global north dominance. How? The world is becoming multipolar. See, earlier only USA was powerful. Let's say after the World War, USA and USSR, these were the two countries who were the most powerful. Every other country was going with either this country or that country. After some time, that is after the disintegration of USSR, there was only one country who was called as the superpower. That was USA. But right now, the world is moving towards multipolarity. Multipolarity means many countries are becoming very powerful, very influential. For example, you have one pole called USA, you have another pole called Russia, then you have another pole called China, another pole called India, then you have another pole called France, etc. So there are different poles. So there is no one single power. And here, global south is capable of challenging the dominance of entire global north. And this is going to have impact on the geopolitics. It is said that the 21st century in which we are right now living, it is Asian century. Why Asian century? Because you see the emerging markets are in the Asian region. And here when we say Asian, global south countries and Asian countries are more or less similar because most of the Asia is part of global south and they are leading. That's why overall we are saying what is the stance of global south? It is going to matter in the international forums. Clear? Now, moving ahead. Even though this group is very significant, very powerful, there are some challenges, there are some concerns related to global south. First of all, these countries are still going ahead with issues like poverty, income inequality, economic inequality, etc. They don't have the basic infrastructure which is required in their country. Although they are emerging countries, but the infrastructure is not there. Then in many countries you will see there is no political stability. You see, political stability is very important. If the government is changing every single day, you look at Bangladesh, you look at Sri Lanka, they are also part of global south. Do you see any kind of political stability? No. So this is a challenge in these countries. When there is political instability, that means the government is continuously changing and all. In that case, you cannot come up with planning which is of long term. You cannot have a really good economic growth. Now, India could be one of the exceptions that we have got some political stability and our economy is growing in a relatively better way as compared to other countries. But when you are looking at entire global south, you cannot just look at India or China. You have to look at entire global south. Clear? Now, another concern is related to climate change. Now, we all know that the entire world is facing the issue of climate change. But see the impact of climate change. The impact is more on global south rather than global north. Maximum people who are getting displaced from their place are living in the global south. So this is a major concern. People are already poor, and when suddenly a cyclone comes or anything happens because of climate change, they become more poor. They become completely extinguished. So this is also a big problem for them. They don't have infrastructure. I already told you, whether it is road infrastructure, railway infrastructure, ports, etc. Nothing is there. When you don't have infrastructure, how would you expect that there will be investment in your country? It will not be there. And if there is no investment, how can you expect that there will be economic growth? So this challenge is there. Apart from that, because there is lack of education, there is lack of skills, and all these infrastructure opportunities are not there also. That's why overall the human capital which should develop. Human capital means if there is a normal human being, if you give him education, if you provide him decent health and provide with some skill, then this person will become a human capital. Capital means it will generate you some profit, some income. It will become resourceful, an asset for you. Okay, so this is lacking in these countries of global south. Clear? Now we know these are the concerns. What are those initiatives wherein we are trying for some cooperation between these global south countries? Because we said the core problem is there is no unity among these countries of global south. If you look at China, India, South Africa, everyone is coming up with actions which suits to their national interest. They are not thinking about entire global south's interest. And that's why, because there is unity among global north, they are able to dominate on the global south. Whereas the global south is not in a position to do that. So here some initiatives which were already taken for this global south cooperation or south-south cooperation. First is this south-south cooperation. This was done under United Nations. We even celebrate one day in the name of South-South Cooperation Day. So what we do over there? Here the countries of global south, they try to cooperate in the field of trade, technology, knowledge sharing, etc. So that they can build some trust among each other. They can become self-reliant. They'll not be reliant or dependent on global north countries or countries like western countries. So it's a good initiative. Yes. Then you have this initiative called IPSA. It's a grouping of India, Brazil, South Africa. Now these three countries, all three are democracies and all three belong to global south. Their history is also very much similar because they were colonized. And these countries came together saying that we are going to cooperate in the field of agriculture, education, trade, etc. So we will focus on sustainable development. This is how they will do it. Good initiative, we can say, where south countries are cooperating. Then a very major institution or very major forum called BRICS forum. BRICS is a very major one. BRICS also represents global south, and the size of BRICS is increasing again and again. With time we may say that the BRICS might become larger group, and it is showing, even if you look at the countries who are part of BRICS, they are the major economies. Specifically, the name BRICS comes from Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. All these 5 countries GDP, if you combine, I told you it is more than the GDP combined of G7 countries, who were the rich and advanced countries in PPP terms, right? So these countries represent the future of global economy. The economy of world depends on these countries, and we have taken the initiatives to bring all these countries together. They have different interests, but we brought them together with this particular forum. Okay. And we have another forum even under, or a group under United Nations, termed as G77. Now this group actually represents global south because these are the 77 countries who are core part of global south, who are developing countries, who are poor countries, and they come up with their interest in the United Nations. So all these initiatives we have taken so that the global south can cooperate. But the harsh reality is they are still not completely united, whereas global north is very much united as compared to global south. Clear? Okay. Let me check any doubts. Venkat Dinesh is saying, sir, what is India's role in establishing peace in this issue? Peace in this issue, as in I'm understanding the question as in the Hamas-Israel conflict. If there is peace between this Hamas and the Israeli group, the entire Middle East will be peaceful. Let's say what will happen if there is no peace? If the issue gets escalated and the war started increasing, Iran gets into the war, many other countries get into this war continues, what will happen? First of all, there will be pressure on India to support Israel, that's another thing. But there will be pressure from the Arab countries also to take a stand with Palestinian cause. Now the problem is, if the issue escalates, we need Arab countries, we need Israel both. Why do we need Arab countries? Because we are dependent on them for our energy security, for our natural oil, the crude oil or natural gas, etc. If the war escalates, suddenly you may see that the prices of oil increased because suddenly the supply of oil is not coming to India because of the war. Or so let's say there is a container on which there is a ship on which there is a container where you have put the crude oil. You are bringing that oil from Saudi Arabia to India, for example. But suddenly, because the war is going on, someone attacked this particular ship. And because the oil supply suddenly stopped, the prices in Indian market for the petrol, diesel will suddenly increase. When the prices of oil will increase, you will see the prices of all the products will increase. There will be very high inflation in India. Because of inflation, there can be even political instability. People will not be happy. They will come to road, just like you see in Sri Lanka or even Pakistan, even Bangladesh. Such scenes can be there when there is such instability. In economic terms, I'm telling you. And we can't go against Israel also, because Israel is right now helping us in our security initiatives. whenever we are going ahead with counter-terrorism operations, whenever we want some kind of technology, we look at Israel. So from security perspective, when we want to fight against China or Pakistan, we want to secure our country, we see that Israel is helping us. So if there is a peace between Arab and Israelis, that is certainly going to help India. That is very good thing. But if this peace is not there, the issue escalates. That's the worst scenario for India. Clear? Now, as far as role is concerned, India can play a role wherein India can try to negotiate with these countries. Negotiate as in we can provide some support wherein we have good relations with Arab countries, we have good relations with Israel. We can put everyone on a single table. This is what we can do at max. Okay. Rest remains on the attitude of these countries. Okay.